Years after the events in Hawkins, the original group, now scattered and scarred, are drawn back together by a series of disturbing events that suggest the Upside Down is not only back, but has evolved, infiltrating their minds and twisting their deepest fears and traumas into a new, insidious form of horror. This time, it's not just about monsters, it's about the darkness within. It had been 5 years since the earthquake that had ravaged Hawkins. 5 years since they had seemingly closed the gate to the Upside Down for good. 5 years of uneasy peace, a fragile normalcy built on a foundation of shared trauma and unspoken fears. The group, once inseparable, had scattered, each attempting to rebuild their lives to escape the shadow of their past. 11, now going by Jane, lived a quiet life with Hopper in a remote cabin in Maine. She had suppressed her powers, determined to live a normal life, but the nightmares persisted. Fragmented visions of the Upside Down, of a darkness that felt different, more intelligent, more insidious. She would wake up screaming, her nose bleeding, her powers flickering uncontrollably, despite her best efforts to keep them dormant. Mike, haunted by the memory of Eleven's sacrifice and the constant fear of her return, or the return of something worse, had become withdrawn and obsessive. He studied theoretical physics at MIT, desperately searching for a scientific explanation for the events in Hawkins, a way to control, to understand, the forces they had faced. He filled notebooks with frantic scribblings, equations that seemed to shift and change before his eyes, diagrams that resembled the grotesque shapes of the upside-down creatures. Dustin, ever the optimist, had tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, throwing himself into D&D campaigns and his burgeoning career as a computer programmer. But beneath the surface, the fear lingered. He found himself increasingly paranoid, constantly checking for signs of the upside down, his once joyful laughter replaced by a nervous, twitchy energy. He started seeing things in the static of his computer screen, fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure, a distorted face that seemed to whisper his name. Lucas, seeking stability and control, had joined the police academy, determined to protect others from the horrors he had witnessed. But the training, the discipline, couldn't erase the memories. He found himself struggling with PTSD, triggered by seemingly innocuous things, flickering lights, the smell of burnt ozone, the sound of a grandfather clock. He started having panic attacks, his heart pounding, his vision blurring, convinced that the Demogorgon was lurking just around the corner. Max, still grappling with the trauma of Billy's death and her own near-death experience, had retreated into herself. She lived a solitary life, working as a mechanic, her hands constantly moving, as if trying to outrun the memories that chased her. She refused to talk about Hawkins, about the Upside Down, but the nightmares were relentless, each one a replay of her brother's sacrifice, of Vecna's chilling voice echoing in her mind. She started seeing him everywhere, in the shadows, in the reflections of passing cars, a constant reminder of her guilt and her fear. Will, the boy who had been the gateway, the connection to the Upside Down, was perhaps the most affected. He had moved to California with Joyce and Jonathan, trying to escape the memories, but the Upside Down had followed him. He experienced vivid, terrifying visions, not just of the monsters, but of a deeper, more insidious darkness, a vast, sentient intelligence that seemed to be reaching out to him, whispering promises of power, of understanding. He started drawing again, but his art had become disturbing, filled with grotesque landscapes and monstrous figures that seemed to crawl off the page. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of a series of seemingly unrelated events. In Maine, 11's nightmares intensified, becoming more vivid, more real. She started seeing things in her waking hours, fleeting glimpses of the upside down superimposed over her reality. Vines creeping across her bedroom walls, demodogs lurking in the shadows of the forest. In Boston, Mike's research took a disturbing turn. His equations began to predict anomalies, fluctuations in the electromagnetic field that mirrored the patterns he had observed during the events in Hawkins. He started receiving cryptic messages on his computer, seemingly from nowhere. Messages that spoke of a reawakening, of a gate that never truly closed. In Indiana, Dustin discovered a strange signal emanating from the abandoned Hawkins lab. It was a complex, fluctuating signal that defied explanation. A signal that seemed to resonate with the static he had been seeing on his computer screen. In California, Will's visions became more frequent, more intense. He started speaking in his sleep, uttering strange phrases in a language he didn't understand, a language that seemed to echo the whispers of the Upside Down. These seemingly isolated events were the first threads of a tapestry of horror, a sign that the Upside Down was not only back, but it had evolved. It was no longer just a dimension of monsters. It was a sentient entity, a malevolent intelligence that was learning, adapting, and reaching out to those who had once been connected to it. This section will detail the group's reluctant reunion, their investigation into the new threat, and their discovery of the echoing gate, a psychic residue of the original gate, a point of vulnerability in the fabric of reality that the Upside Down is using to infiltrate their minds and manipulate their perceptions. Driven by their individual experiences, the group slowly, reluctantly, begins to reconnect. Phone calls, hesitant at first, then increasingly frantic. Emails filled with cryptic warnings and disturbing images. A shared sense of dread that transcends distance and time. They realize that they are not alone, that the nightmares, the visions, the strange occurrences are not just figments of their traumatized minds. They are connected, bound together by their shared experience, by their connection to the Upside Down. Mike, using his scientific knowledge and his obsessive research, identifies a pattern in the anomalies, a pattern that leads them back to Hawkins, to the ruins of the old lab. Dustin, using his tech skills, manages to decode the strange signal, revealing a chilling message, a series of coordinates that pinpoint the location of the echoing gate. 11, despite her fear, agrees to use her powers to delve into the psychic residue of the Upside Down, to try to understand the nature of the new threat. But each time she connects, she is overwhelmed by a wave of darkness, of fear, of a malevolent intelligence that seems to be actively resisting her, pushing her back, threatening to consume her. Will, guided by his visions, leads them to a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of Hawkins' lab, a chamber that was not on any of the original blueprints, a chamber that seems to have been created by the Upside Down itself. In the center of the chamber, they find it, the echoing gate. It's not a physical portal, like the ones they had encountered before. It's a shimmering distortion in the air, a point where reality seems to be thin, fragile, almost transparent. It pulses with a faint, unsettling light, and from it emanates a low, rhythmic hum that resonates deep within their minds. As they approach the echoing gate, they begin to experience vivid hallucinations, personalized nightmares that exploit their deepest fears and insecurities. Mike sees 11, consumed by the darkness, becoming a monstrous creature, a weapon of the Upside Down. Dustin sees his friends turning on him, blaming him for their suffering, abandoning him to the monsters. Lucas sees himself failing to protect those he loves, watching helplessly as they are consumed by the darkness. Max relives Billy's death over and over again, each time more gruesome, more painful. Will sees himself becoming the new host for the Mind Flayer, a vessel for the entity's malevolent will. The Echoing Gate is not just a portal, it's a psychic amplifier, a weapon that turns their own minds against them. They realize that the Upside Down is not just trying to break through into their world, it's trying to break them, to shatter their minds, to turn them into conduits for its darkness. This section will focus on the group's struggle to resist the influence of the Echoing Gate, their journey into the depths of their own minds, and their confrontation with the evolved intelligence of the Upside Down, which takes the form of a familiar yet terrifyingly different entity. To close the Echoing Gate, they must enter it, not physically, but psychically. They must journey into the labyrinth of their own minds, confront their deepest fears, and find a way to sever the connection between their world and the Upside Down. 11. Using her powers, creates a psychic link between them, allowing them to enter the Echoing Gate together, to support each other, to fight the darkness as a team. But the journey is perilous. The Echoing Gate is a constantly shifting landscape of nightmares, a reflection of their collective trauma, their shared fears. They are confronted by monstrous versions of themselves, by twisted representations of their past, by the ghosts of those they have lost. They must navigate a maze of distorted memories, of broken realities, of impossible choices. They must face their own demons, their own weaknesses, and find the strength to overcome them. Along the way, they discover clues, fragments of information that reveal the true nature of the evolved Upside Down. They learn that it is not just a dimension of monsters, but a sentient entity, a vast, interconnected consciousness that feeds on fear and negativity. They learn that the original gate, created by 11, had not just opened a door between worlds, it had awakened something ancient, something that had been dormant for eons, and that something was now learning, adapting, evolving, becoming more powerful, more insidious. They also discover that the entity has a new host, a new vessel for its power, a familiar face twisted by the darkness, corrupted by the Upside Down. It's Henry Creel, but it's not Vecna. It's something more. He has evolved. He has transcended. He is the embodiment of the Upside Down's will, its intelligence, its hunger. He calls himself the Weaver, and he explains that he is not just controlling the Upside Down. He is the Upside Down. He is the network, the consciousness, the darkness that connects everything within it. He is the architect of their nightmares, the puppeteer of their fears. The final confrontation takes place at the heart of the Mind Labyrinth, a vast, ever-shifting space that reflects the collective consciousness of the group. The Weaver, in his new, monstrous form, is waiting for them. He offers them a choice. Join him, become part of the Upside Down, embrace the darkness, or be consumed by it. The team refuses, and a fight for survival is at hand. The fight will detail about the final battle, will explain the conclusion. The final battle is not a physical fight, but a battle of wills, a clash of minds. The Titans use their combined strength, their friendship, their love for each other, to resist the Weaver's influence, to fight back against the darkness. 11, drawing on the love and support of her friends, rediscovers her powers, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a force of creation, of connection. She uses her abilities to sever the psychic link between the Weaver and the Echoing Gate, to cut him off from his source of power. Mike, embracing his intellect and his courage, finds a way to exploit the Weaver's own logic, to turn his own twisted equations against him, to create a paradox that disrupts the flow of energy within the mind labyrinth. Dustin, using his knowledge of D&D, recognizes the patterns of the mind labyrinth, navigating its treacherous pathways, guiding his friends to safety. He realizes that the mind labyrinth is not just a prison, but a game with rules that can be broken. Lucas, drawing on his training as a police officer, uses his discipline and his focus to resist the hallucinations, to hold on to reality, to protect his friends from the monsters that lurk within their own minds. He provides them with a grounded point, allowing his friends to resist the hallucinations. Max, confronting the ghost of Billy, finally accepts her grief and her guilt, finding the strength to forgive herself, to move on, to embrace the future. She realizes that she is not defined by her past, but by her choices, by her courage, by her love for her friends. Will, facing his own connection to the Upside Down, finally embraces his power, not as a curse, but as a gift. He uses his visions, his understanding of the entity, to guide Eleven, to help her sever the connection, to close the echoing gate. Together, they manage to defeat the Weaver, to sever his connection to the echoing gate, to banish him back to the depths of the Upside Down. But the victory is bittersweet. The echoing gate is closed, but the scars remain. They have faced their deepest fears, their darkest secrets, and they have been changed by the experience. They return to the real world, to the ruins of Hawkins' lab, but the world feels different, fragile, uncertain. They know that the Upside Down is still out there, that the threat is not entirely gone. It is only a matter of time before it returns, before it finds a new way to break through. The group, once scattered, is reunited, their bond stronger than ever, but they are also haunted by the knowledge of what they have faced, by the darkness they have seen, both within themselves and within the Upside Down. The story ends with a lingering sense of unease, a suggestion that the true horror is not the monsters, but the psychological scars they leave behind, the constant fear that the darkness is always lurking, waiting to return. The victory is temporary, the battle is never truly over, and the whispers remain, a constant reminder of the echoing gate, of the darkness that lies just beyond the veil of reality. The cycle is broken, but the threat is eternal, and the next time, they might not be so lucky. The ending is not happy, but it is real. It is a reflection of the trauma they have endured and the ongoing struggle to find peace in a world that has been forever tainted by the Upside Down. The fight is over, but the fear remains, and the darkness is always waiting.